Before the world knew the Beatles as legends, one quiet drummer was sitting in hospital rooms, playing rhythms on furniture, never imagining history was waiting for him. Ringo Starr didn't join the Beatles through fame or luck alone, but through pain, patience, and moments no one talks about. Today, Ringo finally revealed the real story of how he joined the Beatles, and it's far more emotional than most fans ever knew. Ringo Starr was not born into music, fame, or comfort, and his early life was shaped by struggle more than sound. He was born Richard Starkey in Liverpool, a city rebuilding itself after war and hardship. From the start, life taught him how fragile things could be. His parents separated when he was very young, leaving his mother to raise him alone. Money was always tight, and stability was something Ringo never fully felt. But the real turning point came when illness entered his life. As a child, Ringo suffered from severe stomach problems that landed him in hospital for long periods. He spent months away from school, friends, and any normal routine. Those hospital walls became his world, and loneliness became familiar. Later, when he thought the worst was over, tuberculosis struck him as a teenager. Again, hospitals replaced classrooms, and isolation replaced childhood freedom. Doctors weren't sure how much of a normal life he would ever have. During those long stays, Ringo discovered rhythm in the most unlikely places. He tapped on bedside tables, trays, and anything he could reach. Music wasn't taught to him, it became a survival instinct. While other boys were learning trades or finishing school, Ringo was learning patience. He watched life move on without him, slowly building quiet resilience. That patience would later to define his drumming style. When he finally returned home, school felt foreign and pointless to him. He left early, taking small jobs just to help support himself. Education ended, but curiosity never did. Ringo's first real connection to music came through skiffle, a raw and accessible style. Skiffle didn't require expensive instruments or formal training. It welcomed people like Ringo, who learned by feeling rather than reading notes. He joined his first band, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, not as a star but as a steady presence. At first, he played makeshift percussion before finally settling behind a proper drum kit. The drums felt natural, like they had always been waiting for him. Rory Storm's band wasn't famous, but was hard-working and determined. They played endless shows in Liverpool clubs and smoky halls. Ringo learned endurance the hard way, night after night. When the band began performing in Hamburg, Germany, everything changed. Hamburg was loud, rough, and relentless, pushing musicians beyond their limits. Long sets and late nights hardened Ringo's playing style. It was in Hamburg that Ringo first crossed paths with John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison. At the time, they were just another hungry band trying to survive. No one spoke about destiny or history yet. Ringo wasn't immediately close to them, but respect grew quietly. They noticed his timing, his reliability, and his calm under pressure. He didn't show off, but he never fell apart either. The Beatles at that time already had a drummer named Pete Best. Pete was popular with fans and fit the image of the band. From the outside, there seemed no reason for change. But behind the scenes, tensions were forming. Musically, the band wanted tighter rhythm and more consistency. Personally, communication was beginning to break down. Ringo returned to Liverpool with Rory Storm, unaware of the conversations happening around him. He focused on his own band, his own path, and his own survival. Joining the Beatles was not yet a dream in his mind. Life kept teaching Ringo humility rather than ambition. He never chased fame aggressively or forced his way into rooms. That quiet nature made him different from most musicians. When the Beatles needed a drummer for recording sessions, Ringo was called as a substitute. He stepped in calmly, without ego or fear. Those sessions changed how the band saw him forever. Ringo's drumming didn't dominate songs, it supported them. He listened more than he played. That ability stood out more than flashy technique. Behind closed doors, John, Paul, and George began discussing what the band truly needed. The decision wasn't easy or sudden. It was painful, controversial, and risky. Ringo still had no idea his life was about to change completely. He went back to his routines, his gigs, and his modest ambitions. History, however, was quietly moving toward him. When the call finally came, it wasn't dramatic or glamorous. It was simple, direct, and heavy with consequence. Ringo Starr was being asked to step into a storm. When Ringo Starr finally received the offer to join the Beatles, it did not feel like a dream coming true. It felt like standing at the edge of something dangerous and unknown, because he understood immediately that saying yes would not only change his life, but would also hurt people he respected and invite judgment from an entire city that was deeply loyal to the band's original lineup. At that moment, Ringo was still part of Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, a group that had shared the same long nights, rough clubs, and exhausting Hamburg schedules with him, and leaving them behind felt less like moving forward and more like abandoning a family that had survived hard times together without any promise of reward. What made the situation even heavier was the fact that he was being asked to replace Pete Best, a drummer who was popular with fans and closely associated with the Beatles' early image, meaning Ringo knew before his first rehearsal that many people would see him not as a new member, but as the man who took someone else's place. Ringo later admitted that he did not celebrate when he got the call, because he was raised in a world where nothing came easily and every opportunity carried consequences, and his first instinct was not excitement but worry about whether he was strong enough to handle the pressure that was clearly coming. The first days after joining were uncomfortable and tense because Liverpool audiences reacted harshly, with some fans shouting insults and others holding signs demanding Pete Best's return, and Ringo had to sit behind his drum kit knowing that no matter how well he played, many people had already decided they did not want him there. Instead of responding emotionally, Ringo did what he had learned as a child during long hospital stays, which was to endure quietly, focus on the task in front of him, and trust that time would reveal the truth, even if it meant standing alone while the noise swirled around him. Inside the band, however, things felt completely different, because John, Paul, and George quickly realized that something had shifted the moment Ringo joined. As rehearsals became tighter, recordings felt more natural, and the rhythm finally supported the songs in a way that allowed them to grow rather than fight against the beat. Ringo's drumming style was not flashy or aggressive, but it carried a steady confidence that made everyone else feel secure, and that sense of reliability became crucial as the band began writing more complex material and experimenting with sounds that required trust rather than competition. As the band entered recording sessions, producers noticed that takes required fewer repeats, tensions eased faster, and the group functioned more like a unit. And although Ringo rarely spoke up about his own contributions, the impact of his presence became impossible to ignore. Despite this progress, Ringo struggled internally with feelings of inadequacy, often believing he was the least talented member of the group, and that insecurity followed him into the studio and onto the stage, even as the band's popularity exploded at a pace no one had experienced before. During the early tours, the chaos of Beatlemania created a strange environment where the band could barely hear themselves play, and Ringo's role became even more important because he had to keep perfect time while surrounded by screaming crowds, flashing lights, and constant movement that would have overwhelmed a less focused drummer. Offstage, Ringo's calm personality helped balance the group, as his quiet humor and relaxed attitude offered relief during moments of exhaustion, and his ability to listen rather than dominate conversations made him a grounding presence when fame began to pull the band in different directions. As success grew, Ringo faced the strange reality of being globally famous while still carrying emotional scars from childhood illness, insecurity, and years of being overlooked, and the sudden attention did not erase those feelings but instead magnified them in unexpected ways. There were moments when Ringo questioned whether he truly belonged, especially when critics underestimated his skill or labeled him as replaceable, but what mattered most to him was the respect he earned inside the band, where his contributions were felt deeply even when they were not loudly praised. Over time, Ringo's drumming evolved naturally alongside the Beatles' music, moving from straightforward rhythms to inventive patterns that supported the band's experimental direction, and his instinctive approach allowed him to adapt without losing the simplicity that made his playing so effective. John Lennon later admitted that the band did not truly feel complete until Ringo joined, a statement that carried enormous weight for Ringo, because it validated every doubt he had overcome and every quiet moment where he chose commitment over ego. Looking back, Ringo explained that joining the Beatles was not about destiny or luck alone, but about being prepared through hardship, patience, and resilience, qualities that were built during years when no one imagined he would ever sit behind the drums of the most famous band in the world. He understood that his difficult childhood, long illnesses, and slow rise through the music scene had shaped him into someone who could survive pressure without losing himself. And those experiences became the foundation that allowed him to stand steady while the world watched. As the Beatles' legacy grew, Ringo became more comfortable acknowledging his role, recognizing that his value was not measured by spotlight moments, but by the consistency and emotional support he brought to the band during its most demanding years. Today, when Ringo speaks about how he joined the Beatles, he does not frame it as a fairy tale, but as a deeply human journey filled with fear, loyalty, self-doubt, and quiet courage, reminding fans that history is often shaped by people who simply show up and do their job with honesty. The truth is that Ringo Starr did not enter the Beatles as a star seeking fame, but as a man shaped by survival who understood the cost of opportunity and chose to face it anyway, even when acceptance was uncertain and criticism was guaranteed. In the end, Ringo did not just join the Beatles, he completed them, providing the rhythm, balance, and emotional stability that allowed the band to become something greater than four talented individuals. And that is the real story behind how he took his place in music history.